Hey, Justin.
Hey, hello, hello.
How you doing?
I'm very well. How are you? How's Cali?
Oh, it's great. It's a hot day today, humid, but it's good.
Yeah, are you
Yeah, things
still
are well.
still still living the dream in the quarantine or things loosened up at all?
Somewhat. I mean, depends on who you ask, but but it's things are getting a little better. Yeah, kids started school, so that's always good.
Awesome. I like the
Remote.
fiddle fig. I like the fiddle fig tree in the background. Is that real?
It's not. I wish it was. I wish it was. It's not. I love that you recognized what it was. That's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, it's that's one of those things when your wife's into all that stuff, you just listen and you store those things up for later. So that's how I that's how I've mastered
That's
the art
awesome.
of marriage and surprising my wife, right? You just have to index those things and then they come back out as a gift later on.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. Cool. Thanks for joining. Giving people a few minutes to join. Hi, Rosie. Um, yeah, so I'll get started. We'll record this and put it up for people as well. So Justin, you and I met virtually. I saw your stuff on LinkedIn, and what caught my attention was that you had a similar mission to what we're doing with Hatch Brighter, but you were targeting dads, which I thought was so cool. Because even with what we do, automatically a lot of the following we have is moms. And so I think the fact that you are targeting dads specifically is genius. um, so for the people joining, real quick, Justin is a TEDx and international speaker, author of Daddy Saturday, entrepreneur. You are a podcaster. We've been on your podcast, which was awesome. And obviously the founder of Daddy Saturday, which kind of started in your backyard. So I'd love for you to tell people a little bit about how Daddy Saturday came to be.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So thanks for asking. Thanks for having me on. It's such a good pleasure to reconnect. And I think that when I go back, I've had this Genesis story told so many times that it's like my storybook at this point. And I love telling this story because something that started in my backyard is now an international movement, which is so crazy to think about. And if I go back about 12, 13 years, my wife was a teacher. She had just left education and was trying to figure out what she wanted to do next. And I said, start your own business and I'll support you. And so she came back and said, I want to do babies or bridal. And I'm like, well, look, you got birth, you got death, and you get married in between. So I love the model. And we chose bridal. And she went all in on opening her couture bridal store in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we had our first daughter at that time, Hayden Olivia. So we actually named the store after her. And I found
That's
myself
awesome.
with my 2 week old daughter at home by myself all day on Saturdays because my wife's working at her store, being the entrepreneur, wearing all the hats. And fast forward, we added 3 boys to the mix every 2 years. So now I had 4 kids at home and trying to be
Yeah.
super dad on Saturdays and just like failing miserably because I was a corporate America dad. I was, tired, stressed out, burning the candle at both ends and having what I call the dad hangover most Saturdays and just not living up to my full potential as a dad and not realizing the opportunity I had with my kids on those days together. And so I stopped everything and just look, I'm going to change this. And I began planning those days intentionally. I began creating a game plan for our days together and just literally picking up things off of YouTube or around our house or in our community that we could do together that would be so fun and try to make those epic moments with my kids. And everything changed. Like literally everything changed. The relationship, our communication, even my relationship with my wife. And those Saturdays, they weren't perfect. We still had plenty of, bumps in the road, but man, they were some awesome days together. And my kids started
Yeah.
to affectionately look forward to those days, and they started calling it Daddy Saturday. And they'd say, Dad, what are we doing for Daddy Saturday? And they were so pumped, like on a Wednesday, to spend that time with me on the upcoming weekend. And so we named it, we claimed it, and I did the TEDx 2 years ago on fatherlessness. And that's when I learned about the epidemic in our country of dads not being in the home, but also dads in the home physically, but not being emotionally present. And I said, man, that was me for a period of time. And I know so many dads that are like that. I see them everywhere. And I have a formula, I have a process that can help those dads to break through that barrier, be intentional, be engaged, and to change the trajectory of their kids' lives. So we launched Daddy
Yeah.
Saturday, wrote the book, and the platform is what it is today. And as I mentioned in the beginning of that, the coolest part is it's taken a life of its own, and it's now way beyond just me and my 4 kids. We have Daddy Saturday Kenya established, and they're actually building our corporate offices with brick and mortar as we speak over in Kenya, which is just so cool to think about.
That is incredible. What was the stat? You shared a stat with me once of, I don't know if it was like 20% fathers are not in the picture. What's that breakdown?
Yeah, so there's about 24 million, 20 plus million dads that are the biological fathers not living in the home. And then if you look statistically, the number of children being born out of wedlock today is 51%. There's more kids being born without a dad than with a dad today. So the trend is not going in the right direction. And then if you look beyond that, right, you can't really put a quantitative number on it. But if you think about the 40 plus million other dads that are in the home that are physically present but emotionally absent, there's a large percentage of those that are. And so that was my remit, my calling was to go and really approach that group of dads to help them reignite and reestablish their fatherhood.
So that's the challenge with today, right? And even phones, because of phones, we're physically there, and it's so easy to feel like, hey, I checked the box, I was there with my kids, and forget that it's not about just physically being present. So for you, when you had that realization, did you even realize that you weren't being intentional with your kids when you were spending Saturdays with them? Or did you or was it more of, hey, I know I'm not, but I don't know what to do? What do you see more, and what was the case for you?
Yeah, so I think, I was in a unique situation because I was supporting my wife and taking my kids all day on Saturday. And of course, I was glad to do it, right? But at the same time, it's like I had a full day, 8 to 10 hours with my kids. So it's like I had to fill that time gap with something that would be fun. We couldn't just sit around and watch TV all day. And, I would often get frustrated at my kids just because it was like I was tired, I was exhausted. And by not having a plan, it never turned out well. And so by being intentional, by being engaged, all it really was is maximizing the time I had with my kids. And I think that's what the whole point of this platform is. It's to say it's not just about Saturdays. It's about every day of the week being mindful of all the time you have with your kids. And are you intentional? Are you being physically present and engaging them in a specific way? And so that could be before school, it could be after school, it could be before bed, it could be certainly on the weekends. Whatever time that is for you and all that time you have, it's a mindset, it's a process by which you approach your kids and approach your role as a mother or father.
Yeah. And what have you seen, I think the most challenging part of raising kids, I've got 2 daughters, a 3.5-year-old and almost 7-year-old, and is that sometimes you don't see the effects right away, right? It's not like you make an effort at something and sometimes you see the results, right? You'll see the A in your history class or whatever, but with raising kids, it's not like that. It's a long-term play. So sometimes as parents, it gets challenging, right? Because you're not getting that immediate gratification, right? And you just have to have faith that you're planting the seed. So for you, I mean, what have you seen? Why is this so important? And what are some of the changes that you've seen with your relationship with your kids by being intentional?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. And one of the things that I had to really recognize was there was a lot of business principles that my wife and I have implemented over the years as entrepreneurs and in the corporate sector that we weren't bringing into the home. And so setting a mission, vision, values, creating a painted picture of what you want your family to look like, and helping your kids do the same regardless of their age, right? Of course, the more in depth you get, the older they are. But having that kind of true north or that compass for the way you want to approach life with your kids gives you that end point. You're beginning with the end in mind. I think that's so critical, because if you just go at it in a random fashion, then yeah, look, kids can be the most ungrateful, unaffirming little human beings ever created in the world. And so as a parent, right, you rarely, on Father's Day or Mother's Day, you might get the crayon card when they're younger, or every once in a while you get an I love you or a thank you, but it comes in spurts, and it's not like it's an all the time thing, and never seems like it's enough. It's a very unrewarding role sometimes. But at the same time, if you have that end position in mind, and you know what you want your kids to be, who you want them to be rather, where you want them to go in life, and how you want to be seen with them at that final stage, then it gives you an ability to move that direction. And those micro wins then ladder up. So it's like anytime you set goals, right? You set your 5, your 10-year, your 20-year goals, and then you work backwards and you break that all the way down to what's my quarterly, my monthly, my weekly, and my daily goals. And so when I have that kind of a mindset, I'm able to look at it every day and say, okay, what am I going to do with my kids today? What are the 3 most important things that I need to do with my kids today to help move them forward toward that ultimate goal of raising good kids that become great adults? And those can be small things, right? It can be simply using our car time wisely when we're going between school and practices. It can be, instead of listening to music, we're just sitting there in silence. It's having an intentional conversation that gets underneath a layer with my teenage daughter and opens her up and solves a problem that she has in her life today. It could be something as simple as, telling bedtime stories with your kids when they're younger, and just having that presence before they go to bed every single night, and teaching them gratitude or character traits in the way you tell your stories. There's so many things you can do, but I think all of it has to roll up to that bigger goal, and then being able to use those micro wins every single day that add up to that much larger goal downstream. And look, it's hard when you have young kids. As they get a little bit older, mine aren't that old yet. They're 12, 10, 8, and 6. But when they get to the ages that they are now, I'm starting to see the seeds of all those investments that my wife and I have made in our kids over all these years, right? Over all those Saturdays, they're starting to sprout. And it's not big things, they're little things, but I'm catching, my kids have caught things from me, and I'm starting to see these come out in their lives. And so, I think it's about the time, the investment, and just hang in there, parents. I mean, over time, you will start to see those things bloom. And then when they get in college, just like I was, they will come back and tell you how grateful they are, but it may take that long for them to fully realize it.
Yeah, it's so rewarding, I'm sure, as you see it all kind of coming back full circle. Even with my kids, they're 3.5 and 7, they're younger, but there will be those moments where, my 7-year-old the other day said, Mama, I'm just going to go with the flow. And it was something we had talked about, like
That's awesome.
probably 6 months ago or 4 months ago, and so, they're definitely registering some of these things. So, with Hatch Brighter, what we found is parents have the intention. They want to, right? All parents want to do the best for their kids, and they want to be present. They want to do those things. Sometimes they get stuck with, where do I start? And so I love what you said about micro wins. And, even if you're just going for a drive instead of music, just have the intentional conversation. It's those little things that you can do. It doesn't have to be this big, grand, initiative, because then we just push it aside. And you have many different resources that allow dads to kind of get some quick ideas. Can you talk a little bit about where some of our dads can go to get those tips?
Yeah, well, much like you, I took this idea of saying, look, if I can't beat it, I may as well join it. So I looked at technology and said, how can I use technology and leverage that to reach a bigger audience? And I think as I looked at the audience of dads that are out there, there's 3 ends of the spectrum. You got the 20% at the bottom that just don't care. They're unmotivated. They probably never will care. And they don't want to do anything to be a better dad. You've got the 20% at the top end that are really good dads. They're super engaged. They're, the hero dad that's doing everything right. And they just need to sharpen their saw a little bit. And then you got the 60% in the middle who are good dads. They just need to be a little bit more intentional, reignited, and need some tools or some help to get there, because maybe they didn't have a dad or didn't have an intentional dad when they were growing up. So much of our resources are really, and I want to put that caveat in there, designed for that 60% in the middle and the 20% at the top. And that's who we're going after. So we created an Alexa skill, and we have a Google Assistant coming out as well. And both of those apps are really for the dad who simply just wants to ask Alexa, what should I do with my kids this weekend? Then Alexa will look at the weather in your area. So she'll look out there in Cali and say, it's going to be sunny. Why don't you do an outside activity? She'll list the activity, give you the instructions, ask you if you want to make it epic, of course. And then she'll put the items you need in your Amazon shopping list and even send you the instructions via email. So it makes it super easy, no excuses, right? You can ask Alexa what you should do with your kids. So we've got 52 ideas in there, one for every weekend of the year. We have the book. The book is the field manual for fatherhood. It really is a practical, easy to implement guide for how you be intentional, how you be engaged, how you optimize your life as a dad. Then we created a 7-part series, a course called Dad Boss. And again, it was one of those things. There's all this stuff about mom boss and lady boss. And, you
Mhm.
women have done a phenomenal job as mothers and as women of creating resources and community and helping each other. And us dads just have not done that well. So I created the course to do that, to break the isolation of being a dad and create a sort of community that dads could access the course and get great information on faith, family, fitness, and finances around fatherhood, and also have community that comes out of that. And so Dad Boss was another resource. And then I've got a cool one I'll break kind of live on your show that's coming out.
Oh,
It's
nice.
called it's called the Digital Dad Clinic. And the Digital Dad Clinic is for dads to learn about the top video games that their kids are playing. And we've got some major gamers that are going to come on and do some lessons to teach dads the basics of gaming so that they can learn how to go and play and interact with their kids. So instead of saying, I hate games, games are terrible, I don't know what my kids are doing, in the basement all the time, they can say, hey, can I go play with you? And actually go and be legit enough that they can speak some of the terminology and play enough that they know what, button A and button B does in the game. And it's a
Yeah.
way to create that relationship so they have another point of intersection with their kids. And then our hope is then we get them off the game and get them doing something else together. But at least now they've got another point of commonality instead of being a point of a barrier or an obstacle in their relationship. So we're coming out with new stuff all the time. And we love just creating processes, creating systems, creating products that can help dads. And so those are a couple that we developed recently and that we have out there right now.
I love that. That's amazing. The last one you talked about with video games, I remember talking to or listening to a therapist that was talking about teenage kids, and a lot of parents say it's hard to connect, or they don't talk to me, or they don't, want to really tell me what's going on. And one of the things she had said is, be interested in the things they're interested in, right? If
Yes.
it's an artist or video games, whatever, meet them where they are and take interest, whether you like it or not, so that you can kind of build a relationship based off of that. So I love that you're doing that, of let me meet you there, and then hopefully we can expand and do other things after that. That's
Yeah, I
incredible.
mean, can you imagine, right? The kids sitting there on the couch playing video games with their friends, and the dad walks down and taps him on the shoulder, and the kid's like, "What? Like, what do you want me to do right now? Or why are you interrupting me?" And instead
Yeah.
of the dad saying, "Yeah, I want you to take out the trash or do whatever, go mow the yard," the dad says, "Hey, I was just wondering, why did you do that? Why didn't you do this in the game, or talk about the person they were, using in the game?" The kid would like have a
Yeah.
freak out moment and be like, "What?" Like, instant bonding, right? And that's the point
Yeah.
of it. And the other side of that too, though, is that right now with the way gaming is evolving, the kids are creating community in gaming, and not all of it is positive, by the way, right? There are some
Mhm.
scary scenarios that you hear about where the chat rooms and the forums and the interactions that are going on. And so why not, as a parent, now be a part of that and have a way to intersect with it? So yeah, we're all about
I love that.
helping dads meet their kids where they are. I think that's a great point and super important as a parent.
And with everything you suggested, and all the things that resources that you have available for dads, you're taking into consideration that people don't have time, and so you're trying to make it as easy as possible. Like the Alexa skill, that's incredible, right? You don't have to just talk to Alexa. The stuff will be in your shopping cart, and you just order it, done. So I love that you're doing that. You're trying to make it as easy and simple, because it can be intimidating at times for parents, because you don't know where to start and what to do. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, you've done a great job with the Hatch Brighter app. I mean, I give you guys a lot of credit, and I think it's the same concept, right? And we live in a on-demand, consumer-driven society where we want things, we want it now, we want our 2-day Prime, and that's even a long time to wait. And everybody's so upset right now because of COVID, and Amazon takes longer than 2 days, and everybody's freaking out, like what happened? We have no
Yeah.
more patience as a society, and so I think if you want to reach people, if you want to reach an audience, you've got to again approach them the way they want to be approached. And I think that's a
Yeah.
really good key for your listeners to understand. This is something that I've shifted in my marketing in the way that I try to reach out and attract dads, but it's also really important as you approach your kids. So I made a shift. I used to approach dads about being better dads. And I recognized that that's what they need, but that's not what they want, right? What they really want is to help their kids succeed. And so now
Yeah.
a lot of what we do in Target is around helping them help their kids succeed. And in doing so, we teach them how to be a better dad. And at the same time, it's like when you reach out to your kids, you got to approach them around what they want, not what they need. They need love, they need support, they need security, they need all those things. But if you approach them directly with that, sometimes it's not what they want. They'll push you back. So approach them around what they want, and then ultimately end up giving them what they need, right? So same concept that we do here, and it really works.
I love that. That's amazing. I'm trying to see. I had some other questions. So what if, you know, I mean, the Kenya thing is so fascinating to me, that you were helping dads there, and they're open to this. I mean, I think the interesting thing with us right now, one of the conversations I have with friends, when we were younger, you know, my parents, they were just trying to make a living. They're just trying to get food on the table. And now we have this luxury of, okay, what else can we give our kids? And sometimes it's hard to break the cycle because you want to mimic what you've done or what you've seen as a child. And even with social media, right? We're in a completely different world today. And so parents do have to kind of stop and reevaluate what their beliefs are and why they're doing certain things. How, you know, I think, how have you been able to make that mindset shift, whether it's, you know, across the world in Kenya or here? How do you spark that curiosity of, wait, hang on, let me really reevaluate what I'm doing as a parent or as a dad, and recognize that there is a need to make a shift? Has that been a challenge at all as you've talked to people?
It has a little bit. I think that it's been interesting in terms of the receptivity. You know, you would think that it's something that every dad would just jump on and get behind and say, yeah, that's great. I want to be a better dad. Interestingly, I found that that wasn't a surprise. I was kind of expecting it. You know, men are full of ego. Men are very prideful. And so, you know, it's, if you approach somebody with the negative slant on it, especially a man, then immediately they get defensive and they want to push back and say, I don't need that, right? Or I don't want that. And it's an ego or a pride thing. So we had to be very careful in how we approach men. I think it's really even more important for the female audience I was trying to reach, and how they were to approach their husbands or the father in their life. Because, you know, if they approach them the wrong way, same thing, right? So my instruction every time I get asked the question is, you know, how do I, as a wife or a mother, approach my husband or the father of my kids around this concept? And I would say, look, you have to approach them in a way where you're building them up and saying, hey, look, you're such an awesome dad. Like, the way you engage the kids is so great. I saw this other guy, or I heard of this concept called Daddy Saturday, and like, he's doing some really fun stuff. I think that he's a lot like you. I think you would love seeing this, and it would really help you with the kids. And like, when you present it that way, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's cool. It's an additive thing to what I'm already doing. Yeah. It's not like, hey, you're a deadbeat, now go do this because this guy's way better than you. Like, that's the opposite of what I want. There, I also found some dad envy in there, which was kind of cool. I actually try to incite it a little bit, and that's more towards that top 20% of the spectrum, where if I can get a little dad envy going and get that competitive spirit driving, then it's another positive thing because it creates engagement. So we've had some fun with that in certain parts of the platform. But overall, you know, I feel like there in our society, the view of men has changed, and there's a lot of kind of men shaming and that stereotyping that's gone on, and there's a big shift to change that. And I know there's a lot of people in the front lines that are working to change that. So a lot of it just comes back to, there's deep entrenched thoughts around the role of a father or the role of a parent, and some of that has had to change as our society has evolved. But the biggest thing that I've found that has not changed at all, it's the amount of intentionality, it's the amount of presence that is required to raise good kids that become great adults. And so that's what we preach, and that's what we practice. And you know what? That doesn't change whether you're in California or Tennessee or in Kenya, Africa.
Yeah.
That principle rings true. And that is why we were able to have such a quick affinity and growth over in Kenya, because the core principles of our platform transcend culture, transcend race, transcend, I mean, really any economics. And it applies everywhere. It's done a little bit differently, but those core principles are true. So that's what we've fallen back on. That's what we talk about a lot, and for those reasons.
I love that. I think it's so important to make it universal. I mean, in the end, we're all the same and we all want the same thing. So that's phenomenal. So Justin, I want to end with this question. If there was one thing for our listeners that the dads could do this weekend, one of your favorite activities, simple, nothing too complicated, what would you recommend?
Oh, that's a great one. During COVID, we've had to focus on things that you can do around the house, right? Because people can't get out, so they've had to use what's in the house. So one of my favorite things that we did during COVID time was we did spoon races, and we did the food toss challenge. So you can do both of them, and they're so much fun, especially with younger kids, even older kids. We had a blast. And so you go around your house and you get all these different obstacles. So think like raw eggs and grapes or cherry tomatoes, pickles, carrots. If you have Jello, great. You know, the sloppier and the whipped cream. I mean, any of that kind of stuff. And you got to put it on
Yeah,
the spoon, and then you have to race around the yard. And parents, you got to race against the kids. We had such a blast, so funny. And our rule though, I do Spartan races, and in Spartan, if you drop or if you fail in an obstacle, you have to do burpees. And so you had to do 5 burpees during the race if you drop the item off your spoon, and then you can pick it up and keep going. And then the
I
food
love
toss
it.
challenge, same thing. We had everybody in a line, and we had a bunch of neighborhood kids that actually came over too, and we were tossing the food up. We started with the smaller items like blueberries, then we got bigger until they were trying to catch like an entire pickle in their mouth, or I mean, we had all sorts of stuff, and it was the most hilarious thing you've ever seen. And Blaine, my son, he caught the pickle, and like they all were just laughing their heads off. Super fun, super messy, but it's something that everyone can
That's
do
phenomenal.
all around the house. So spoon race challenge and food toss challenge. There you go.
I love it. We're gonna do that this weekend. I'm gonna do it. We'll take video and send it to you. So
All right, I
that's
want
a
to see
great
it. That's
suggestion.
awesome.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for taking the time. So much good information, so helpful. And I love what you're doing. I love, we've met kind of just virtually, but I just know you're an incredible human being. And you truly care about this mission, and just people in general and dads and kids. So thank you so much, to people like you who are doing amazing, things out there. So thank you. And real quick before we go, again, one more time, if you want to tell people where they can find all your stuff, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks
The
for the kind
website,
words.
wherever they can go.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the kind words. I mean, you're doing the same thing, and it's such an honor to be on your platform, and thank you for sharing the time with me as well. DaddySaturday.com is the hub for all things Daddy Saturday, so you can go there and access all that we have around Daddy Saturday there. Dadboss.com, BOSS, is the way to find more information on Dad Boss, the course for dads. And then you can find me at LinkedIn at Justin Batt. And I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn as well personally. So those would be the 3 spots. And if I can be of any help, reach out to me in any way on any of those 3 sites. And thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. Hope you have an awesome day.
You too. Be intentional, be
Take care.
engaged, make it a great Saturday.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.